Excellent.
Susan, the YouTube channel is excellent. There's lots of great videos on there. So I would highly recommend, if you haven't checked it out, to check it out.
Yeah.
There's my little plug.
Go to YouTube.
Okay.
I was going to say, just go to YouTube and just search Finger Lakes Workforce Investment Board.
Okay.
And it's about 2:35. I think we can get started. I want to welcome everybody to another Workforce Webcast from Finger Lakes Works. And welcome to today's webcast. It's Job Seeker 101, and it's presented through Finger Lakes Wayne Bosse's and Finger Lakes Works and Finger Lakes Community College. Thank you for joining our live webinar. Here are a couple tips to get the most out of the virtual presentation. If you can't hear any audio, make sure your speakers and headphones are plugged in and on. If you still can't hear, click on the arrow next to the mute button, bottom left of screen, to check your audio settings. Please remain muted during the presentation. There will be time for questions at the end. Use the chat box to ask questions. Feel free to type questions in the chat box at any time. You can ask publicly or privately. This webinar will be recorded, and so please be aware of your surroundings if you choose to have your video on. If you get disconnected, please rejoin. You get out what you put in. And on to today's presenters. Presenting today is Petrea Ray. She's the coordinator of pre-employment transition services at Wayne Finger Lakes Bosse's. Petrea has her bachelor's degree in business management and master's degree in counseling education from St. Bonaventure University. During the last 20 years, Petrea has assisted youth and young adults transition into the career of their choice by providing key skills that will help them now and in the future. We also have the Finger Lakes Workforce Investment Board's very own youth coordinator, Amanda Lesterhouse. Amanda has been in the field of workforce development for 10 years, mostly focusing on connecting young adults with training and employment opportunities. With that, I will give it to Petrea. Petrea.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. I'm going to share my PowerPoint in just a second, and then I will get started. I'm unsharing yours, okay, Mike?
Great.
Okay. So welcome, everybody. Amanda and I are going to share some tips to becoming a job seeker today. As Mike mentioned, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box, and I will offer time for discussion. So if during that time you want to unmute yourself and share your thoughts, you are welcome to. But welcome to this presentation. And before I get started, are we recording yet?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. So,
Yes.
Amanda, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so today our hope is that you'll understand the job application process, understand how to utilize your family and friends in that process, and give you some key tips to successfully applying for the position of your choice. So let's start out with, if everybody wouldn't mind introducing themselves. So you will have to unmute for a second. Just give us your first name and the field of interest you may have. If you're unsure of the field of interest you have, that's okay. Just let us know you're unsure, and we'll give you some tips along the way on how you might be able to identify a field of interest. So let's start with Amanda, who's my co-presenter. I'll let her introduce herself because I got going, and then go from there.
My name is Amanda Lesterhouse, and I'm the Youth Assistance Coordinator here at the WIB. And I am in a field that I enjoy working with young people and helping them find employment.
Perfect. And then I'll go through my screen. How's that sound? Mike, would you like to introduce yourself and explain your career, like what you do right now? And then we'll go
Sure. My name is Mike Willison. I'm with the Finger Lakes Workforce Investment Board. I'm a co-worker of Amanda's, and I am the business service coordinator. So I work with businesses in the 4 counties, trying to help them find good workers and help them develop their workforce.
Great. And I guess I'm going to call out your first name. So I'm going to give your first name, and then you tell us the field you might be interested in or why you joined us today. So I think it's Susan. You're next in my box of.
Yes, hopefully my video's on. It may or may not be. I'm Susan Ben Aker. I'm the internship coordinator at Soda Central. I've been doing this for a while, over 20 years. Worked at Wayne before I came here. Really enjoy what I do. I think most committed to our advanced manufacturing mission to help out our local employers with students who may not otherwise be going on to work. However, I do see that I have a student on today who she'll talk about herself, but also interested in an item in the STEM field. So I think those are important messages for us to get out in the Finger Lakes region.
Awesome, thank you. Connor, would you like to share a field that you are interested in learning more about?
Or how about an easier question, Connor? How come you joined us today? Let's start there.
Let's see what I can learn about.
Okay,
All right.
perfect.
Great.
Credence, would you like to share why you joined us today or a field you might be interested in seeking a job in?
Well, I've always had a thing for music, and I want to see what I can learn as well. So yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Leanne, I think you're next.
I'm Leanne. I'm a plant counselor with Ontario County Workforce Development.
Awesome, thank you. Audra.
Hi, everybody. Audra Meringue from Gananda. I'm a work-based learning coordinator there. And I am thrilled that two students that we work with, we being Janet Bolter and I, are here to join us today. So I'm very excited.
Cool, awesome, thank you. Janet. Oh.
Your mic's not working, Janet. Oh,
That's okay. If you want to type it in the chat box, but it looks like you're here with Audra. Is that correct? Awesome.
That is correct. Janet is a special educator at the high school and works very closely with her students to help them to become college and career prepared once they leave high school. So this is part of what we're sharing with the students in the class as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you for introducing her for us. Kristen, would you like to share why you're here or what career field you're interested in?
I'm not really sure exactly what I want to do yet, but I want to do something with math.
ooh, something with math.
Okay,
Like
thank you. Thank you. And Ryan, you're the last box I can see. If any, would you like to share?
I'd like to get into like real estate or something like that.
Cool. Okay. So we've got a variety of different topics today, Amanda. That's awesome. So is there anybody that I missed? I just want to make sure because I'm using my little magic Zoom box Hollywood Square item here, but I don't think I missed anybody. Okay.
Hope you got everybody.
Well, thank you for sharing. And if you are ever unsure or if you want to just see what's out there as options in careers, we highly recommend the OStarNet interest inventory that you can find at mynextmove.org. I know I use it during my presentations and so does Amanda. So there's a lot of, you go through that, you pick out different items that you would like to do when you're working, and then it gives you different job options in 6 different zones from entry level to needing a doctorate degree, I believe, in zone 6. So it's definitely worth exploring. Even if you know what you like or what you're interested in, it just can confirm that. And you might find out about a job or a career path that you weren't aware of in that field. So let's get started. So what is a job seeker? So I define a job seeker as, first, someone who's looking for a job, someone who's looking to change careers. So they may have a job, but they're looking to change the career path that they're in, or someone who's looking for a promotion. That's how I define what a job seeker is. how do you find a job? So I often say there's many different ways that you can find a job. Here's a couple. Oh, hang on a second. I don't know if you guys can see the chat box or not.
Oh, it's just me. I put in the link for mynextmove.org.
Awesome.
Just
Thank you. It shot up orange on my screen. So how do you find a job? So the first way you can find a job is you might use a search engine. Okay. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. The second way is word of mouth. Someone might tell you about a job opening at the place that they work at. The third way, social media. This is kind of new in my world. I don't know if it's new in everybody else's world, but you can now find jobs on Facebook jobs. You can find jobs. We've previously been able to do that on like LinkedIn and things like that. But Facebook jobs is a new thing. And I've also noticed a lot of employers are posting jobs on social media to raise awareness of their job opportunities. Job announcements. So you might go to the workforce Finger Lakes Works and see job announcements. You might go to the newspaper still. Some people still use the newspaper and look for job announcements. You might go to your college or university that you attended and see job announcements. Your school counseling office also might share job announcements. So there's a variety of different places you can find those. Question to the group, and you can put it in the chat box if you like. Is there any other ways you can find jobs? Does anybody have any ideas? Or you can unmute and shout it out.
You can talk to your work-based learning coordinator.
You can talk to your work-based learning coordinator. Yes. Very good.
Good one, Audra.
Thank you.
Any other ideas? How about your one-stop center? I didn't list that on there, but that could be an option.
I have a quick question, Audra. So what if a student's graduated and they're looking for a job? Can they still contact you guys?
Absolutely. When I was a traditional counselor, and even now as the work-based learning coordinator, I always say to students, I'm always here for you. I mean, I say always, probably 10 more years. And after that, I'm not making any promises, but I'm here if you have a question and you can come in and see me, or that was before COVID, but contact me however, and I'm happy to help along the way. So
that is what I figured. I just wanted to make sure we get that information out there, the awareness of that. Susan?
Yeah, I would echo that sometimes we're a well-kept secret. The traditional way is to look at the counseling office. I think counseling is trending more in setting up student schedules and actual mental health work, whereas we get the phone calls. I have a job that I posted a little bit ago. Some lady would like to have her yard raked, some elderly lady, and I've had no responses to that. Unfortunately, during COVID, it's tough, but those are things that we have to be careful from a liability perspective as how we post them. But I just put things like that out there. Babysitting, we often get calls for. So that's a way for students to get some work experience, without a formal job.
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
I do a bulletin board where I post things here in our school, and I'll speak for Erin Schlegel, who's not on with us, that they have one at Wayne also.
Okay. Yeah, and I think a lot of school districts do that, which is awesome. So the big way that I think a lot of times, and I kind of already mentioned this, is your network. So your network is how you figure out what jobs are out there and how you might earn a job. So I think we already mentioned this, your career counselor or your work-based learning coordinator, we should put on here. Teachers or faculty members you might have, friends and family, previous employers, colleagues, even your HR department talking about a promotion or a job that's offered out there. And possibly even your boss. If you make your boss aware that you're interested in a promotion or a different type of position, they'll make you aware of a job. So I have another discussion question for you. I do a lot of these is what you want me to talk to people. So for maybe the people on the call that are seeking a job, how would you let your network know that you're seeking employment or maybe seeking a promotion or a change in careers? That's 3 different categories, but how do you think you would let them know? You can put it in the chat box or you can unmute and give us your opinion on that.
I'll keep an eye on the chat box.
Thank you.
Well. Or maybe, you know, how would you tell your network and start brainstorming who you would tell?
Yeah.
If you have a social media and you put it up there that you were looking for a job, how many hits might you get off of that one post? So there's my social media. There's mine.
That's yours? Social media? You put it on social media? Okay.
Put it on social
Anybody
media.
else? How do you let your network, and what I mean by network is friends, family, colleagues, pretty much anybody that you know, how would you let them know that you're looking for a job? So social media, we got that, check. Any other ways? I have a monkey wrench question to put in there too. What if you want it kept confidential? Would you put it on social media where everybody could see it?
Nope. That would be more private messages. Maybe using your social media to private message people. Right? No. That's right, Ryan.
I feel like we have a chat response. Hang on.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
It's from Ryan. He was responding, no, you wouldn't want to put it on social media to keep it confidential.
Gotcha. Anybody else? How do you let your network know?
Can I add a couple things?
Sure.
Thoughts? Okay, so my thoughts is when you're letting your network know that you're looking for a job, it can be helpful if you let them know if you do have some kind of an idea of a job that you want to do, right? Maybe you're looking for, you know, I'd like to pick up a delivery driver job. Like that's specific. So make sure that your network knows you're looking for a delivery driver job. You know, maybe it's I'm trying to think. Maybe you're looking for a job after school. That's a good thing to let your network know because you know you're not looking for jobs from the hours that you're in school, right? You cannot work while you're in school. So you're looking for a job. Maybe you're just looking for a job to pick up on Saturdays. Maybe you want to get into babysitting. So giving them a kind of an idea and not just that, you know, I really need to get a part-time job because then you might be getting things, you know, from all over the place that might not necessarily fit what you're looking for. So letting them know you're looking for a job and giving them an idea of what you're looking for.
And the reason that it's really important to let your network know that you're looking for a job is that 80% of the jobs are not advertised. So, or they're advertised, you know, maybe internally, and that's how you find out about it. So it's really good to keep the word out that you are looking and what types of jobs you're looking for. So when I like those ideas, like if you're looking for a part-time job or an after-school job, or if you're looking to change companies or careers. So thank you for sharing that, Amanda. Does anybody else have any thoughts about networking and how you let your network know before I go to the next slide? Okay. So how do you apply for a job? There's 2 ways that you apply for jobs. You can apply in person or you can apply online. So when we think about applying in person, some questions you want to think about before we move on is, how do you ask for an application? Oh, it popped up in a different order. I don't know what I did there, but first, do you know if they are taking applications during COVID? Sorry, I don't know what happened there technology-wise. This is a really important question right now because a lot of places you can't just walk into and without an appointment. So you want to know what the COVID protocol is. Are they taking applications during COVID? If they are, how do you ask for an application? What should you wear? What will I need? And what are some other do's and don'ts? And we're going to answer those questions in the next couple slides. And then also we think it's really important to watch for drive-through job fairs. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. If you're applying online, that's how that was supposed to come up, by the way. Where do I find an online application? What will I need? When should I follow up? What are some do's and don'ts to online applications? And watching for virtual job fairs. So these are some tips that we're going to go over in the next couple slides. So let's start with drive-through job fairs. So first, We recommend that you complete any steps ahead of time. So that might be registering beforehand to let them know that you're coming, following any COVID rules or regulations. So when you want to know what those are and make sure that you follow them when you arrive at the drive-through job fair. We want to make sure that you wear a mask when you're there. Even though you're in your car, you want to keep that mask on. Bring a copy of your resume to distribute, and you might want to bring multiple copies depending on how many employers are going to be at that drive-through job fair or how many positions you might be interested in applying for. Dress for success.
So something I just thought about, I'm sorry to jump in, but something that I just thought about with a drive-through job fair, because normally when we talk about going in person somewhere or going to a job fair or something like that to apply, well, one of our tips is don't take anybody with you, right? Like, right? If you're going to fill out an application in person and you have a parent or somebody drive you, to make sure they wait outside. But in a drive-through job fair, you don't really have that option if you don't drive. So this would be like an exception where it would be, and Mike, what would you think in that situation? Would you agree? Like if the applicant themselves don't drive, that they would still be able to go to a drive-through job fair and as a passenger?
Yeah.
So that would be like, that would be like the exception to that rule.
There was a drive-through job fair, I think last week, and they had 5 cars and 7 people. So it's totally acceptable if you bring somebody that is driving you to help you because you can't get there because you don't drive. So I think the important thing is the employer really wants to know who you are, what kind of skills you have. I don't think they really matters for them how you got there, as long as you get there.
And this is kind of a new thing. I mean, I don't feel like I saw drive-through job fairs before COVID very often. So this is a unique thing during this time of COVID. So I think that is a good tip, because later on we're going to talk about don't bring anybody with you. So I'm glad that you brought that up, Amanda. So bring a copy of your, go ahead.
Can I ask a question, Patria? I've never been to a drive-through job fair. I don't have any idea what that looks like. So can you just give me a little bit of insight what I can expect? Does this happen in a big parking lot? I mean, what does it typically look like, just logistically?
So Leanne, I see unmuted. Leanne's going to jump in because they just had a drive-through job fair in Ontario County. So go for it, Leanne.
Yeah, so yeah, it's new to everyone. I don't think there's really any rules yet. But how we set it up is we, the staff, were the first point of contact when the customers drove in. And like I said, it's new to everybody. So we kind of just explained how it was going to work. We kind of like pointed them in the direction, like this employer's here, this employer's there, and you kind of can just drive around in a circle and stop at the ones that you want to stop at. Yeah, bring your resume ahead of time. But everyone stayed in their car, they wore masks, and it worked out okay. There was a couple people that came together. So I think kind of anything goes at this point. There's no rules, no right or wrong answer.
Well, really the rules are to respect social distancing, respect the fact of staying in your car, respect wearing a mask. Those are really the only living under the COVID guidelines right now. So yeah.
Great.
So
thank you.
And Leanne,
yeah. So yeah.
Oh, sorry, Leanne, quick question. How long would you estimate it takes to go through that process when you go to a drive-through job fair? Does it depend on how many employers you stop at, and how long do you have to wait to see an employer?
That's a good question. I think it was, there wasn't very many employers at the particular job fair we just held, maybe 5 or so. So some people wanted to talk to every single employer, and then some people wanted to just talk to one specific one. So there was never a point where there was like a backlog of cars, like the McDonald's drive-through situation. That wasn't happening. And it was over a long period of time. So, everyone kind of got their turn and was able to talk.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing that.
And then a question popped up in the chat. Were the employers in tents?
That is another great question. So this particular day where we had the job fair, it was raining cats and dogs crazy. So some employers brought tents, but it was like the type of rain where it was raining sideways. So a lot of them just stayed in their cars. So they stayed in their car, they rolled down the driver's window, and they, they talked to the other cars kind of like this. So everyone stayed in their vehicles.
Oh,
And the
interesting.
employers
So
in their car. Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, it was wild. Mhm.
So even in COVID, in pouring rain, we can still make job fairs happen.
Yes.
That is good to know.
Yep.
Awesome.
But people were coming in and they were confused. So we stood out there with our umbrellas and said, like, this is the scoop, this is what's happening. And we just made it work.
And Leanne, where did you hold it again? I know Ontario County, but was it in a parking lot? I think that was one of Audra's questions.
Yep, it was in a parking lot. We held it at FLCC campus. Yeah.
Okay.
Nice.
Okay.
Nice. Lots of room.
Yeah. So a couple other tips is dress for success. Always wear your, finest clothes, whatever those might be. And if you have a question about drive-through job fairs, which we answered a lot of them today, but if you have more questions, you can always contact your Career One Stop office. And we're going to share that contact information at the end. Virtual job fair. So I think this has been a popular item also during COVID times. So again, complete any steps required ahead of time. Ensure that you have a couple things in place before you attend a virtual job fair. One is that you have access to a camera and a microphone on your computer because the employers are going to want to see you and be able to hear you. Make sure that you are in a quiet place without interruptions. I always joke that there's certain times of the day when my kids may interrupt when I'm trying to be professional. You want to make sure that that doesn't happen. Your dog doesn't bark, kids don't interrupt, things like that. Now we understand life happens in this virtual world, but that you have reliable access to internet too. I probably should have put on here, that your internet's not going to go in and out. Again, dress for success. And if you have any questions about the virtual job fair, contact again your Career One Stop office and they can help guide you. And I think I just saw a question pop up.
That was me. I put the link for the Career Center contact info.
Perfect.
Let's talk, Patria, can we talk a little bit more about dress for success?
Yes.
And give some examples, exactly what we mean by that.
Okay. So would you like me to go or would you like to go? Because I know we both.
Yeah, I can jump in. So
Okay.
I can just share, like when I think of dress for success, I think of like what I might wear to church because I go to church. So that's what I think of. Not necessarily you don't have to be in a full-blown suit and tie or a full-blown, dinner party dress, but looking, making sure that, if you have khakis or dress pants, one step above jeans or leggings, and honestly, leggings, I think would honestly be fine too, as long as the rest is professional and everything's covered, right? That's really the issue when it comes to leggings. But yeah, and just making sure, there's no stains, rips, tears, writing, especially depending on what it says. No hat, if you're used to wearing the same ball cap all the time, making sure that that's off and things like that. And then also, like one of the things we've been running into more and more is like earbuds, and hanging like the earbuds over, even little things like that, like making sure you're all, all that stuff is put away.
Yeah, and I would agree with all of that. I was just going to mention earbuds. The only time that I would think earbuds are appropriate is if it's how you hear the sound during a virtual job fair. I think otherwise you want to take them out because if that's how you hear the sound, I think there's no way around that. But, but I agree with you, church attire or your best business casual clothes is what I usually call it. Take a shower, brush your teeth. I was going to mention that in a little bit, but all that fun stuff, just make sure you're looking as presentable as possible when you go to some of these events. And especially virtually, I think sometimes it's easy to be, make sure, whatever's in your camera vision looks professional as well. So making sure it looks nice around you. Just keep that in mind.
Can I just butt in for a second, Patria? I just wanted to offer that some schools have professional closets that students can go to and see if there's any clothing there that might work for a job interview. We have one started, but because of COVID, that's on hold, and it's probably on hold in other places. But that's something that students can ask their work-based learning coordinator or counselors about, to see if their school has something like that, to offer them some additional options, because a lot of times students don't have a whole lot of the business casual clothes in their closets. So that's another nice way to offer them some options as well.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that,
Yeah,
Audra, because
absolutely.
that is huge. So is there any, Amanda and Mike, are there any community locations for like that? Because I know when I lived in the Buffalo area, there was like a women's
Yeah.
center that you could go to and get, interview clothes. So I'm just asking that.
I was just thinking about that. I was just thinking about if there were any communities. Honestly, none that I can. But again, my expertise really comes from Wayne County. But so no, nothing that I could think of. No, I don't know. I don't know about other communities.
I would suggest contacting the Career Center, because the staff that work at the Career Centers know a lot about the resources that are available within the community. So you could just call them up and say, I got an interview next Tuesday. I'm looking for some interviewing threads. Can you point me in the right direction? And if they don't have it, they probably know someone that does.
Perfect. Thank you for all of those resources. Okay.
Leanne?
Oh,
did Leanne unmuted, so I thought she might have something to add.
I was just, what Mike said.
Okay.
Just ditto. Okay.
Yep.
So when applying in person, and Leanne actually, I believe, did a great video on applying in applications. It's on the YouTube channel. Leanne, I hope that's correct, because I did see that the other day. But some tips to applying in person: dress like you already have the job. We talked about that, dress for success. Bring a pen, resume, and references. And we're going to go into that a little bit more about references, but make sure you bring a pen and a copy of your resume. A big tip that we have is do not chew gum, smoke, or vape before entering the building, or if you're going through that drive-through job fair. I think you don't want a big cloud of smoke coming out of your car. Wearing perfume or cologne that's really strong. I actually probably recommend don't wear perfume or cologne when you're going to apply in person, or bring any food or drinks with you. And the reason that we recommend that is people are really sensitive to smells, and you don't want that to off-put anybody in any way. Here's that tip about don't bring anybody with you, the exception being that drive-through job fair if you do need somebody to drive you to it. If someone does drive you to your in-person application time, they can wait out in the car. That's okay. Just don't bring them into the actual location with you to pick up that application. We recommend that you don't play on your phone, answer any calls, or send any texts while you're there. If you have to take your phone out, the only reason that we recommend that you take your phone out is if you have to look up something that's on your app that you need to put on your application. For example, a phone number of a previous employer or a reference number or something like that. And our big COVID tips on there during this time of COVID is bring a mask with you, wear that mask, don't shake hands, and respect any guidelines or signs that are posted at the employer's location. So if it says to stand in a certain spot, stand in that spot. And any other tips that I missed, Amanda? I think that's everything we discussed.
Just because normally we would advise to shake hands, or, if they go to shake hands, right? Like, make sure you're ready for a handshake, but not right now. So, it's just a little bit different thing as you're going in person. But yes, no, I nothing that I can think of. Again, like that, do not bring anyone with you, but of course, if you're going through something like a drive-through job fair, that can't be avoided. And then just making sure, again, and before you're even going in person, did you make an appointment to go? Is it a place that is even doing in-person applications at this time? Because a lot of places we're used to that used to do them may not be doing them right now. The only place I can think of off the top of my head that I've seen applications out where you can still fill them out in person is Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah. So this is a unique time. Oh, go ahead, Mike.
I would just add to that, you want to make eye-to-eye contact when you're talking with someone. Look like you're listening to the person, and making that eye-to-eye contact is is key to doing just that.
Mhm.
Right.
Okay, so a couple tips as you prepare to go to that in-person asking for an application and filling it out is prepare yourself on how to ask for the application and how to introduce yourself, and exactly what Mike said, making that eye-to-eye contact. Normally I would say here, shake the person's hand as you introduce yourself, but right now we're saying do not shake their hand. Practice how you do that, maybe in front of a mirror. I know that sounds cheesy, but it's a good thing to do, is to practice, or ask a friend if you can practice with them, or maybe because we have 2 work-based learning coordinators and a teacher on the call, practice with them. How do you ask for an application? How do you introduce yourselves? And if you're not comfortable with any of those options, record yourself on your phone, just set it up and then record yourself kind of going through that so you can see how you sound. And does it sound appropriate? Are you asking it the right way? Again, I have my pull yourself together before you go to pick up an application or fill it out. Make sure you got clean clothes on. I keep saying this: shower, brush your teeth, bring everything that you might need, like we mentioned. So those are the 3 P's to applying. Go ahead.
So here, I got a question. So let's just say I'm looking for a job. I happen to be out and about on like a normal day where like I'm running to Walmart to pick up my groceries. So I'm wearing like my sweatpants and I have my hair thrown up in a bun, and but I see that there's a help wanted sign and it says, please apply within. Can I stop in and fill out that application, or should I go back at a later time? Should I go in and be more presentable and go back at a later time?
My opinion is to go home, be more presentable, and come back. Does everybody else agree with me on that? So it's tempting because you're there in the moment, right? And like, you're like, okay, I need a job and I see this help wanted sign and it's tempting, but I think it's important to go home, make sure you have the information that you need, and make sure you look presentable, not in your pajamas or sweatpants.
Because first impressions matter, right? And
Yes.
going in, even going in right then and there would be getting that application in sooner or quicker. It could leave a bad first impression.
Yes, I agree. So thank you. Was there any other questions on being prepared or nope? Okay.
Nope.
So quick question. So you go to pick up that application. Do you fill it out? And this is to ask the group, do you fill it out at the location at the moment that you pick it up, or do you leave and bring it back? What do you think? And I'm sorry the sunlight kind of changed in the space that I'm in.
Or does it make a difference? Or
Yeah,
what difference might you think it makes? Credence says leave and bring it back. Thanks, Credence.
Thank you.
All right, we got 1 vote for leave and bring it back.
Okay. Anybody else? This is not a trick question. Well, it kind of is, because I just changed my mind on my. So do you complete it at the location or do you leave and bring it back? Or does it depend?
Yeah, so Audra, I think it depends on how confident you are in application completion skills. Susan, be prepared with your info and do it there. Time matters. So now we got to vote for, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Anybody
and
else?
Audra's saying, I think it depends on how confident you are in your application completion skills. And that's true. You need a lot of information to fill out an application, right? You need to know if you have work history, your contact information, reference contact information if it's asking for references. Yeah, so that's true. You might not have everything you need. Have a cheat sheet or keep your info in your phone. Ooh.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to talk about that in just a second, but
yeah,
okay,
we're getting there. Good tips.
So I think it depends, right? So I agree with Susan. In some cases, time matters. So you want to get it in right away. And if you're prepared, then you can stay. And again, during COVID times, are you allowed to stay and fill it out? Because they might say you're not allowed, you must leave and come back. So then my follow-up question to all of this is, if you do leave and come back, how long do you wait to bring back your application? What do you think?
I think it should be as quickly as you can get it back in. That's my answer.
I agree with Amanda, and I'll just add this. I never, whenever I get an application, I never get just one. I always ask for at least two, but maybe three blank applications, because number one, my handwriting is awful. And number two, you're probably gonna make a mistake. So, and then what do? You don't have another application. So I always recommend at least get two applications. If you need time, and if it's helpful, bring it home where it's quiet. You can complete it and focus on it, rather than focus or completing it there.
Yeah. Great.
So I think the bottom line is one, it kind of depends on how the employer is set up. If they're set up for you to complete it in person and you're prepared, go right ahead. If you're not, if you or they don't have a space there, you can take it home, and that's fine too, as long as you can get it back in as quick as possible. Leanne put something in the chat I just want to read because I think that's a good tip. So or a good way to look at it. It says, she said, if I went through all the trouble of getting ready to be presentable to pick up an application in person, I would go prepared with my info. You might strike up a good conversation with someone who works there and make a great first impression.
Mhm.
So it's a good way to look at it. And then Susan, I think it depends on if you are looking for a Dunkin' Donuts type job or you are looking at something like a more career type move, like teaching, right? That's true too.
Mhm. Yeah. So I think it depends on the position, depends on the location. So thank you for your input on that. I just wanted to have a little discussion. Okay, so online applications. So there are many different platforms that you can find online applications. Finger Lakes Works offers a great platform, and I'm hoping this will work. Let me test it out so you can see oh, why is it not working? There we go. I double clicked on it. There we go. You can see that they have right now some positions posted on their website from Clifton Springs Hospital.
So I think, Trey, I think you have to reshare that screen that popped up with that link.
Oh, hang on.
It doesn't automatically show it.
Hold on, out so you can see it. So when I clicked on that link, can you see it now?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. So this is, if you go to the Finger Lakes Works webpage, they have a number of jobs listed on there, and I just highlighted the ones that are in the healthcare industry at Rochester Regional Health. So they show their online applications for Clifton Springs Hospital and Newark Wayne Community Hospital. So you could click on these and apply for those jobs right there. Okay, let me go back. I'm going to stop sharing for a second to my PowerPoint. I just wanted you to see how easy it was to find those. Uh-oh. Technical difficulties. There we go. Probably the most popular website to find jobs and apply on right now that I hear about is Indeed.com. I know I have personally used it, when I've been in my job search process. I've also looked at the local Chamber of Commerce in the communities that I was looking for jobs, especially when I was moving to a new area. And then obviously colleges and universities. And what we learned today was your work-based learning coordinators also post jobs along with school counselors. So, and then on the right-hand side of the screen, and you'll be able to see this if you review the webinar, is a number of job search engines where you can find online applications. So anything to add to where you find online applications? And employers just post them on their website. Like I think about Home Depot, you go right on their website and you apply. Dunkin' Donuts has it posted on their website and you can apply. So you can go to the individual employers and apply directly there. So any questions on that?
New York State Department of Labor has a job bank as well.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Okay, so when you're filling out your application, here's some tips to filling out that application. Number one, which I didn't put on here, is make sure you use your legal name. Make sure you put your full address. You're going to need to put your phone number on there. And what if you don't have a phone number? Maybe you have a shared phone number with your parents or guardians. That's okay. Just make sure you indicate that voicemails can be left on there just in case the name comes up with someone else's name on it, like maybe it's your mom's name. Make sure though, a couple key things with voicemails, and I'm stealing this from Amanda and Amanda can jump in, but make sure your voicemail is appropriate. It's not the voicemail where you call and it says, hello, 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 and you think someone's there and they're not, or it's an inappropriate song or anything like that. So I just threw that up there. Make sure that your voicemail is always appropriate, but when you fill out your application, you're going to need a phone number. You're also probably going to need an email address, and make sure that that is appropriate as well. And for those of you who are on the call from your school, one thing that we have learned in this journey over the last 6 months or so is that your school email address may bounce outside emails out. So you don't use your school email address. You're probably going to need to develop a personal email so that you can get those correspondence from an employer. They're going to ask for your work history, your education history, and references. And then sometimes they ask interview questions on there. I was recently talking to one of my friends, and her daughter was filling out an application for the first time, and it asked, tell me a little bit about yourself and why you want this job on the application. So I just wanted to include that in there. Sometimes there may be those basic interview questions on there that they want to kind of hear from you ahead of time on that application. So I thought I would add that and share it. So Amanda?
So you may have said this, and I'm sorry, I was looking up the link for Department of Labor. So again, when you, along with the voicemail tips and the email tips, make sure that you're checking your voicemails, that you're emptying your voicemail box and deleting voicemails you don't need anymore. So your voicemail, because your voicemail box can get full. And if it does, then like if I called you right now and it said your voicemail box was full, I couldn't leave you a message. So if that's an employer trying to call you for an interview, you might miss out on an interview just because they can't leave you a voicemail. And then also same thing with your email. If you're going to put your email address down, make sure that you check that on a daily basis to make sure that you're going to see emails that come in. So those are just some things I wanted to add.
Including your spam, because it might go to spam or junk, to make sure if you're if you're an active job seeker right now, that you're checking those to make sure that you're not missing an email, because that could be really important.
And one thing with work history, sometimes people can have a hard time remembering the dates that they worked, especially if it's asking on the application, if it's a format where it wants the month, date, and year, and struggling with trying to figure out exactly when that was. And again, Mike, Leanne, jump in, but I mean, I say it's okay if you can just try to ballpark, try to get it as close as possible. I try to help jog people's memories if they're like, I have no idea, like what season was it? How old were you? Things like that, where we can try to get it as close as possible to an accurate date.
Very true.
Good strategy.
Yeah. A couple quick application tips when you're filling out an application. If you submit a resume to an employer, you still have to physically fill out that application if they give it to you, either online or a paper application, and you attach your resume to it. If you upload your resume into one of those online application sites that we mentioned, you want to double check and make sure everything gets filled in correctly. And this is an Amanda tip as well. And that a lot of times pop-up ads and phishing ads might come up. Be very careful as you're filling out an online application that it's still the application that you're filling out, and it's not something like maybe a training or a university that is in that field, because then you're going to get bombarded with that and you might not ever complete the application, or it might link you back to that application, but then you might get phishing emails and emails that you weren't planning. Did I describe that correctly, Amanda?
Yes, and this was a few years back, but snagajob.com, this used to happen a lot on Snagajob, not so much on Indeed. I don't think with Indeed you have to worry about this, but with some of the other like job search engines.
Just some cautionary tips and things to remember. So talking about work history, what do I include? So Amanda just talked a little bit about making sure that you include the dates and how to estimate that. But you will need to know where you worked in the past, possibly who your supervisor was, your dates of employment, and then you kind of list them most recent going backwards. At least that's what I do when I list my work history, and I think that's pretty common. But read the directions on the application if it's different. Some difficult questions, kind of a discussion topic. It might ask you reason for leaving, it might ask you your previous salary, and it might ask you about your supervisor. If your supervisor's left their position, that might be difficult. Who do you list? So what do you think about these? Are these difficult things to fill out for everybody, or are they easy things for people to fill out? I find them difficult sometimes depending on what your reason for leaving is. Maybe if you don't want to say what your salary was in the past, or if your supervisor wasn't there, but what does everybody else think?
If anyone has quit or been let go of a job, how do you put that on an application?
I think most employers realize that not every job is right for everybody. I think the important thing is being honest. And maybe reason for leaving, you could put something to the effect of would like to explain or discuss during an interview. But typically people leave because they grow and they find other jobs. So saying, I found another job is perfectly fine.
Okay.
And exactly, it's okay to be honest and to say something like you were right. whatever happened, the best policy is honesty. And most of the time too, once you get to that interview part, and hopefully you get to that interview part, and if you were let go or quit a job, when you get to that interview part, then you can explain what you learned from that experience and maybe some things that you could have done differently, that kind of thing. Because once you get to that interview process, that's what the employer is looking for is, what you learned, like Michael said, how did you learn? How did you grow from that experience?
And this is a great time to go back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier. Go back to those resources, contact or meet with someone at the Career Center, because your reason for leaving is very specific. Having someone to bounce that, some ideas off how to approach it with an employer may be very, very helpful.
Perfect.
And Susan put in the chat, no bad mouthing, no matter under what circumstances you left or were asked to leave. Absolutely correct. You never want to badmouth a previous employer, no matter what those circumstances were. And again, that's why I was saying, if you did quit a job because of bad circumstances, you can talk about that in an interview, about how you learned from that experience and what you might have done differently, that kind of thing.
Perfect. Thank you, everybody. Okay, so what if I don't have a work history? And I know we have a couple students on the line, so you may not have a work history. So some things to think about in replace of a work history is, have you done any volunteering or community service that you could list? Have you had any leadership roles at your school or in the community? So have you been a president of a club, or been in Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, or have you been in any clubs or activities? Or have you had any small jobs that may count that you might not realize count? So maybe babysitting, mowing the lawn, walking dogs, taking care of an elderly person in your family, or taking care of children in your family. So all of those can count, and it's really about those transferable skills that you gain during those experiences that you can then explain to an employer in an interview and on that resume potentially. So there are ways to get around if you don't have a work history, and let employers know that. Anything that you'd like to add, Amanda?
No, and again, if this is like a place where you get stuck because you don't have any work history, this is what the career centers are there for, to help you figure this stuff out.
Perfect. Okay, so references. So I always recommend to be prepared with 3 references. A reference is someone who can vouch for you as an employee. So we recommend that you have a full name of that reference, no nicknames. I always use my Uncle Moose as an example. My entire life, I thought his first name was Moose and his real name is James. Okay, so make sure you know the full real name, you know their address, and that's usually, for their employment address. You don't necessarily have to put their personal address, an email address, and a phone number that the person can be contacted at. And you always want to make sure that you ask the person ahead of time and that they're aware that you're listing them as a reference. The worst thing is when you get a call to be a reference for somebody and you had no idea you were listed or that phone call was coming and you're not prepared. So always make sure that you let that person know that you're listing them as a reference. And I think earlier in the chat, we mentioned bringing that ahead of time. I would agree with whoever mentioned that. I think it was Susan. I always, when I'm applying for a job, and even when I go to my interview, bring a copy of my references with me on a sheet of paper so that I'm ready to go with all of their contact information. So do you guys have any idea who you might ask for a reference when you're looking for a job? I realize I ask a lot of questions.
Connor unmuted, so I don't know if Connor has something to add.
So who might you ask, Connor, if you're unmuted? Who might you ask as a reference?
Oh, he's not.
Maybe not. I feel like I heard somebody, but it was really quiet. So does anybody have any suggestions on who you might ask for a reference?
Who could vouch for you, especially this if you're a student? Who could vouch for you, especially if you don't have a work history? Who would you list as a reference? You haven't worked before and you're going to get your first job and they're asking for references. Who can vouch for you to talk about your punctuality, your attendance, your teamwork, your leadership? Who could talk about this stuff to an employer? Audra put in the chat a teacher. Excellent, right? Teachers, club advisors.
I was going to say coach.
So with friends, so Credence put a friend. So it's not, yeah, you could use friends if they can speak to your character. And I would lean more towards anybody that you have done volunteer work for. Maybe it's a friend's parent that you have helped out with some stuff around their house. Things like that. I have used past coworkers before. So that's, you know, if it's a friend that you've done like maybe a lot of volunteer work with, something like along that line.
Previous employer, you can list.
Previous employers, of course, your neighbors, church members. Absolutely.
Perfect.
Absolutely. Because usually, well, I would say all the time, they're going to ask for people who are not related to you. Okay, so that's another thing to think about.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing those. Okay, so what do I do next? So next you turn in your application, either in person or online. So you've completed the entire application process. If you turn it in person, you want to thank the person you're giving the application to. And I always recommend asking who might be reviewing it. And if they share that with you, I always try to send that person a follow-up email saying, hi, or well, dear so-and-so, I've submitted my application for this position. That's why I have an X there. And then if you don't hear anything in 2 weeks, it's okay to follow up with a phone call, checking on the status of your application. Anything
and it's actually encouraged that you do so and follow up on that application.
Yep, because that shows, what do you think that shows to the employer if you follow up on your application? That was not a planned discussion question. I just threw it out there. Like enthusiasm.
Well, after 2 weeks goes by, anything could have happened, right? You could have gotten a different job or may not be interested anymore. But if you are still interested and still looking for a job, they're not going to know that unless you follow up with them. And sometimes some companies, they get so many applications in all the time, but when you call and follow up, it might bump yours back up to the top of the pile.
Perfect. So some quick social media tips, and I think we've already mentioned some of this, but make sure you create a LinkedIn account if you haven't already created one. That is a great way to network with employers, see what jobs are out there. I think
just because there's a couple younger people on the, so if you've never heard of LinkedIn before, think of it as professional Facebook.
Thank you. Yes. Sorry. And be cautious what you post on any social media platforms. 77% of recruiters report running searches on their candidates, and that comes from a curriculum that I use called Skills to Pay the Bills. And I think that's true. Do you know what I mean? So avoid complaining about former employers. We just talked about that a little bit. Avoid showing pictures of partying or just descriptions of like exploits, aggressive language, any inappropriateness. And nothing is private when you put it on social media. So monitor your page, watch your comments, and set it to private. It doesn't mean that it can't be found though. So just be very, very careful what you put on social media. So social media, we talked about that first bullet is a positive. You can find jobs on social media, you can network on social media, but you also have to be very careful what you post on social media.
You have to keep in mind that your social media is an extension of yourself, and that people, potential employers, college, that you can be judged based on your social media presence before even possibly being met in person. So make sure that the image you're putting out there on social media is not a negative one.
Yep, perfect. Okay, so some final tips. Know your network, reputation matters. So that same thing, making sure that people are saying positive things about you. Quick tip on how to follow up. I recommend a phone call or email. Don't text message an employer. Even if an employer gives you their cell phone number, that doesn't mean that they're ready for a text message to come in. Would you agree with that, Amanda? That's just that's the number you can call them at.
It's one of those things where I feel like right now, especially with COVID and everything, where it's one of those things that's becoming a little bit more acceptable as time goes on. Texting, once you get into a job now, it's more common where it's like texting in to a supervisor, texting in, to work. But just know that if they give you their phone number to follow up with them, even if it's a cell phone number, really you should be calling and not just texting. Okay. Mm-hmm. Unless they were like, hey, text me to follow up in a week, right? Then okay, follow their directions. But for the most part, it's going to be phone call first and then email as a backup. And then now texting is getting a little bit more in there.
Yep. Connor, did you have a question?
No.
Okay, thank you. And then just a final tip to think about during this time of COVID is that some jobs are essential right now and some jobs are non-essential. And so what does that mean for you as a job seeker? Are you looking for an essential job that guarantees that you're working and you're working no matter what? Or are you looking for a more non-essential job? And we just wanted to share that as kind of a thought process as you're looking for jobs.
So if you think back during the shutdown, think about the places that stayed open and the places that sent their employees home. Either we're furloughed or they're working from home, they're laid off, that difference, that if you're looking for something where you're going to be guaranteed hours during the next shutdown, or during, like I'm saying that like it's definitely going to happen if another shutdown happens. It's just another layer to keep in mind right now, right, as a job seeker.
And then preparing for the next step. So if you get your application, you get that interview, what's the next step? Interviewing. So we wanted to share some information on interviewing with you. There is a great website that you can go to learn more about interviewing. And I just realized I didn't put it on here, but it's through the Department of Labor where you can practice interviewing. It'll ask you questions, you record yourself answering those questions, and even the Department of Labor will give you feedback. I bet that Amanda's putting it in the chat box right now.
I'll find it. I'll put it in the chat. I'm going to do our YouTube page right now.
Yep. And then she's going to put the YouTube page in there, which I was about to click on, but I'll let her put that in the chat box. Make sure that you're prepared to interview in unique ways because of COVID. It used to be most of the time you interviewed in person, but right now during COVID, you might have to interview over the phone or even via Zoom. So those same tips that we talked about for the virtual job fair apply to if you're interviewing over the phone or via Zoom. You want to make sure that you have a camera, a microphone, you're in a quiet place, you're on the phone, you're also in a quiet place. So those same tips apply. And the really awesome thing is if you would like some tips on interviewing, we're offering Interviewing 101 on December 3rd at 2:30. Amanda is running the registrations for that, so you can register for it. And if you're not sure,
the registration for that isn't live yet, but we'll send it out when it is.
Okay, so as soon as it's live, we'll go there.
And you can email me in the meantime, though. Feel free to email me. There's my email address, and if you definitely want to do that, go ahead and email me.
Yeah. And if you're not sure, and we're going to come back to this website again, mynextmove.org. You can do an interest inventory that helps you explore. And you can also work with the career centers. I mean, I know we've mentioned those a couple times, and I know we've put them in the chat box, but you can work with them. And Amanda, do you want me to show the YouTube channel, or did you put it in the chat?
Well, it's 3:40 right now. So if you want to open it up to just so we have time for questions. I don't know how many more slides you have.
Yep.
If you have.
Nope, that's it. That's the last slide, I believe. So.
Okay. Okay.
So I'll put up our contact information after I open that up. So I'm sorry I went over. The discussions were so good that, I normally do this in 45 minutes. So here is the link to the YouTube channel. I got it correct, right? You guys can see that?
Yep.
Okay.
Let me see. Let me open it up. Yep. Oh, look,
So
there's Leanne.
Yeah. So you can see that there's a lot of valuable resources on here to help you build your skills along the way. So
And we'll add the recording of this webinar on there as well, in case you want to revisit it.
Okay, so there's our contact information. Is there any last questions before we get off? We really appreciate you joining us today. So any questions, anything we didn't answer for you on becoming a job seeker?
Here is, I'm going to put this in the chat real quick, is the direct link to get to the ONET interest profiler, ONET career interest profiler. So that's the direct link to get directly to that part of the ONET website.
I just want to say thank you, ladies. I think this was a good place to get started with all the things we're doing. You certainly have provided some information that will be valuable to our students who are needing virtual ways to satisfy work-based learning requirements. I think Audra would agree on that one. The more the merrier, and certainly there are jobs out there, and reason to prepare our high school students for the jobs, whether they're ready to get them or not, but entry-level jobs and working. So, I know you guys do a lot of work on this, and we appreciate it. And I'm happy to say that I have a SOTA student there. Thank you, Kristen. And getting your adult view into the schools is really vital, and we appreciate it. So
no problem.
Thanks, Susan.
Thank you.
Good to see you, kind of.
Right.
So any other thoughts or questions?
I think we're all set.
Awesome.
And of course, if you think of anything afterwards, just send us an email.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Have a great evening.
Thank you for all attending. Thank you, FLCC and Wayne Free Lakes BOCES for the partnership. To contact your local career center, FingerLakesWorks.com. Any follow-up questions, you get a hold of Amanda Lesterhouse at FingerLakesWorks.com. Thanks. Happy job seeking.